rent it out to a family, or we can try and rent it out to, say, students or young professionals. Now, if you had like 3 large bedrooms in here, you might be able to rent it out for like 700-800, maybe even a little bit over $800 a room. All right, guys, Matt McKeever here with another episode of Deal Destruction. Hey, Ivan, how's it going?
Pretty well, Matt. How are you?
Good. So I'm glad to have you here. This is actually the second episode, so still really new to Deal Destruction, but I'd love for you to just give us a breakdown of your experience with real estate investing so far.
All right. Well, zero experience. I have not got into it at all. This is my first property, so I'm excited for you to destroy it and see if we can get some value out of it.
All right. So we've got 55 Euclid here in London, Ontario. Do you want to just kind of talk to us about what your goals are as an investor overall?
Sure. So kind of following your path, I definitely want to start small. I want to get my hands dirty. I really just want to like learn, especially from this first property. I want to be with like the electrician when he's walking through. I want to be with any of the contractors as they're taking down like walls, or really seeing like where I can get the most value from. And I think in this first property, the most value is just going to come from learning. So I'm willing to pay a little bit more just to have like as many professionals in the house as possible, just to learn from them. So that's really how I'm seeing this first smaller house, and then later I can use that information, since I already have I can build a model from it, and then I know, okay, how many hours this usually takes, how much this costs, and where I can get the best price for things that I can find, and then scale that into other houses down the road.
Gotcha. So I guess in general, for a business model, what's the primary goal? Is it cash flow? Is it flipping and getting spendable cash? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's cash flow. I don't want to sell these guys at all. Just adding them to the portfolio, and the goal is not to sell. Let's hope we don't hit a crazy depression or something. I do not want to sell them, and just keep them as rentals for as long as possible.
And so is there a certain benchmark? Like, what would you define as a good deal for you? Do you know, is that a dollar amount per unit in cash flow? What does that look like?
Well, just to keep things simple, I kind of just want to do the 1% rule on this first deal, and just seeing how, as I continue to add houses to it, things are going to average out. So some properties would be 1.25 or 1.5, and some will be a little less. But just to start out for this very first property, I wanted to hit the average, which is what I would want to keep in my portfolio over time, which is 1%.
Okay. And then I guess tell us a little bit about this property right now, just kind of looking at all the photos and stuff. It's in London, Ontario, in the South End, in the Wortley Village area. Looks vacant, or like an estate sale maybe. Do you know what the story is?
I don't know the story behind it, but I really like the area that it's in. It's a up and coming area, not as much as the Eastwood Village with all the infrastructure being built around it. Like you got lucky not lucky, you saw the opportunity and invested in there quickly. But yeah, it's a perfect, what me Kevin says, like a wedge deal. There a lot of homeowners are gonna come in, they're like, ew, nasty floor, ew, the molding's weird, and kind of get turned off. But for the smaller investor, this is, I think, a great place to start, because I went out and saw it this morning. The foundations look solid. There's just we're going through the kitchen right now. That's an old kitchen that just needs to be not even ripped up. Some of the cabinets could stay. Just replace some of the hardware. It's an easy fix to a lot of these things, like the paint and the carpet. The bathroom's not that hard. So it's a very lipsticky type of job.
Okay. And What exactly is this? Is this a single family, a duplex?
It's a single family.
Okay, 300,000 single fam. And then what would be your primary play with this property?
Primary play as
So
in,
like you buy it for X amount, put X amount of renovations into it, refinance it at.
so I would, well, the way the market's going right now, it's so aggressive. So I would probably get this for, let's say my stop price would be at like 325. Would be the max I would want to put into it. I put in, just looking like, I haven't really run like all the numbers of exactly what has to be done, and because that's what I want to do with a lot of the contractors. But a rough estimate, and you use this in your BURR strategies, like 5,000, the $5,000 rule, almost for like every room or for every place. So I'm looking at around $25,000 a reno to put in. And then to refinance that for 400, and then that, because some of the houses in the area go for that, and then rent it out.
All right. And then what do you think that you can rent it out for?
I wish I had the numbers on me, but that is
So it'll be like a 3-bed, how many baths?
I think 2 bath.
3-bed, 2-bath. Okay. If I had to guess, like a 3-bed, 2-bath there,
1 bath, 1 bath.
or sorry, 1 bath, fixed up nice. Probably anywhere from 17 to 2,200, maybe 2,300. If you had a nice backyard, would be my guess.
Mm-hmm.
Is that roughly the range you were thinking, or?
Well, to follow it would probably be higher, right, for the 1% rule, but it's,
To make it work, but I just don't think market rents are there in this neighborhood, right? I think that, like, based upon just my experience, I would guess it's 1,750 to like 2,300, maybe 2,350 tops, would be the fair market rents.
You mentioned the backyard. Does the backyard affect the rents a lot?
Not really, not normally, but for this sort of property, I would say yes, because this is a single family property, right? So you've really only got two options when it comes to renting out a property like this. We can either rent it out to a family, or we can try and rent it out to, say, students or young professionals. Now, if you had like 3 large bedrooms in here, you might be able to rent it out for like 700, 800, maybe even a little bit over $800 a room, but you're going to be paying for utilities then. Whereas if we rent it out to a family, odds are they're going to pay for all the utilities. So there's kind of pros and cons there. So again, if I had to guess, I'd guess maybe $2,000 for just like if you're renting this to a nice family. Sounds like we don't necessarily have a lot of the expenses on hand, just because this is a property you recently just found. But if I had to guess, I would guess property taxes are probably going to be anywhere from 250 to 350 a month. So I might just put down 300 a month as a placeholder. Utilities, we're going to have tenant pay, so we don't really have to worry about that. Then if I'm looking at, I'll just put a separate line here: property management, vacancy, and repairs and maintenance. Everyone has their own ratios for these, but I personally like using 10% for property management. And what that 10% equals is actually 8% for property management, 1% for snow removal, and 1% for lawn maintenance. Vacancy, again, everyone will have their own numbers. I personally like 5%, just as a nice round number. Same with repairs and maintenance. Now, because this is a single family property, some people might opt to go a little bit lower on these percentages, but either way, it's not going to be anything too dramatic, in my opinion. So then otherwise, we've just got insurance that we're going to have to cover. I don't really know what insurance be, but maybe like $75 a month. Nothing too substantial there. And now we've essentially covered the bulk of our expenses here. Are there any expenses you think that I'm missing on this property?
No, that seems to be
Okay. So I think this would be about it for our expenses. So I think we're looking at uh, 775 total expense. So our net operating income before looking at our debt service is going to be a little over 1,200. And then we're going to have to pay for the mortgage. Now, you could jump over and do a mortgage calculator or whatever. Probably just like guesstimating it, it's probably going to be around $1,200-$1,300 a month. I personally like using, just when I'm doing back of the envelope numbers, what I call the 500-100 rule. And what that means is if you're borrowing $100,000 at 3.5% interest on a 25-year amortization, it's going to cost you about $500 a month per 100,000. So in this case, that would be like $1,500. But again, because it's a nice single-family house, you'll probably be able to get your mortgage for a little bit less than 3.5%. So you might be looking closer to $1,200. But I would guess either way, like once everything's done, you're kind of looking at a break-even property here. Now, one thing we didn't talk about was whether this property actually could refi at $400,000. I think it could. It certainly could. My only concern is whether the $25,000 in renovations that you've got budgeted would be enough. It's this one, right? The yellow brick.
Yeah, that's the one.
So like it could easily have some nice like curb appeal with just a little bit of updating. It's got like the yellow brick, which everyone likes.
Hey YouTube, have you guys been enjoying the sponsorship splash page we have at the end of every YouTube video now? Do you guys like it? Are you a business owner or maybe just a real estate influencer or investor and you'd like more exposure to potentially my YouTube audience? Well, now you can help support my YouTube channel as well as grow your personal brand or your business brand by sponsoring my splash page. It's really not that expensive, and if you want to find out more information, it'll be all below in the video description down. So just go grab it, reach out to my team, and let's chat.
So like it could easily have some nice like curb appeal with just a little bit of updating. It's got like the yellow brick, which everyone likes. The $5,000 rule for renos, usually when we're doing that, it's for rental grade.
Yep.
And so the only reason I kind of bring that up is sometimes that means we won't get top reappraisal value, especially on like a single family home. So I wouldn't be surprised, depending upon what you want to do with that kitchen, you might end up spending like 10 grand on the kitchen, deciding just to like do it all up nice because that's how you're going to for sure get your 400,000 refi, or that's how you're going to get like 4.25 refi or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess like overall, this isn't a terrible rental property, in my opinion. The biggest fear I have here just is it's not going to fit within your original business model, right? And so what I find a lot of people doing, Ivan, in your shoes, especially when they're new, is they get discouraged. And at some point they either quit or they just like are like, screw it, I'm just going to buy anything on the MLS because like, you know, Matt says the 1% rule, but I don't believe it actually exists. So it definitely is one of those things where you're going to have to really be open and honest with yourself about what your motivations are for investing and just be really clear with that, because I definitely know lots of investors that would compromise and buy this property. But at the same time, I don't think this property fits well within your primary goals, other than the fact that it simply gets you some experience. And so there is value in doing that. But for example, literally yesterday on the limo tour, I think one of my wholesalers sold a property for a single family on Gladstone for like 200 or 225,000. So
what is the limo tour?
So the limo tour is just a like essentially, there's a little side tangent here, guys, but the limo tour is a networking event that Jeff Wybo and my team put on, and it originally was literally a physical limo that we would rent out, and people would get on the limo bus and we'd go look at different properties for sale, off-market deals in London, Ontario. Since COVID, we've been doing it virtually. So now we showcase deals all across Southwestern Ontario. So for example, I don't know what they had exactly on the limo tour yesterday, but usually there's at least a few $1 million worth of private off-market deals. I know the previous one, I think we had over $10 million in private deals on it. I think this time the market's getting a little bit hotter just because COVID's kind of subsiding and a lot of the buyers are coming back into the market. So we've been struggling to keep a lot of our deals available just because they're selling relatively fast. But again, there definitely are deals out there. This doesn't seem like a bad property per se. The one thing, and I think you brought it up as well, is this property was probably just listed.
Yeah.
So it's probably going to go into multiples, and that's why you said 325 rather than 300.
Yeah, it's just, and that's something I wanted to ask you about. Like you've been in this market for 10 years. How does it feel now compared to like 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Is it like hotter? Is it more aggressive? Is it less? Like, what is the sentiment with your perspective?
Yeah, so certainly compared to 10 years ago, the market's way hotter and way more aggressive than it used to be. Versus 2 or 3 years ago, this is starting to kind of become the norm. So since 2017, 2018, London's been heating up. And certainly 2019 and 2020, other than the initial peak COVID, it's been very hot as well. Now, all that being said, it just is. And so, some people think, okay, well, if the market's hot now, it's clearly going to cool off or it's going to drop in the future, or I'm going to wait and try and time the market. For me, the most important thing is just understanding that every you can make money in any market and you can make money with any strategy, but you have to be particular about the strategy you use for the market you're in. And so the strategies that I would have used 10 years ago no longer apply the same way as they do today, but that doesn't mean there isn't still money to be made. And at the same time, you can still find 1% ruled deals in London. It definitely becomes harder and harder, but there is still lots of other markets near London where you can still achieve that. So like Sarnia, Windsor, Chatham, all those places.
Cool. Okay. So just keep on hunting then.
Yeah. And honestly, I think make sure that you're not just looking on the MLS, Ivan, right? Like that's the biggest mistake I would normally see investors make in your shoes. And there's one or two guys that I can think of in particular that they've been looking for the last 2 or 3 years and they've been stuck in this analysis paralysis where every 3 months they reach out to me and they're like, hey man, does this seem like a good deal? I'm like, well, it doesn't meet what you told me you wanted. So we need to decide, like, do you actually want what you want? Or are you just saying these things because that's what you think you want? And so unfortunately, this one guy I can think of, he's been struggling with this for over 2 years now. He's been in the hunt to buy a property and he keeps just waiting on the sidelines. He's in Durham, Oshawa area, but at the same time, they're seeing the same appreciation. So, the properties that he was thinking about buying 2 years ago now are worth, 15, 20% more than what they were back then. Now, that's not an argument to say you have to just go buy something because you shouldn't. But the biggest struggle I see with new investors is they're never clear enough on their goals. And because they're not clear on their goals, it's very hard to make a smart decision, right? Because if you don't have a very clear decision matrix or like set of criteria to judge an opportunity by, there's always ways to potentially make money in real estate, right? Like that Euclid property we looked at, potentially what you could do instead is flip it. Maybe there's money to be made there flipping it rather than renting it. But do you want to be a flipper? Does that fit within your long-term goals? And then that's where a lot of people then get on this just hamster wheel of chasing different ideas rather than ever just committing to one clear path.
Right. That makes total sense. Now, I'm pretty concrete in my strategy. I think just like trying to fit the right deals in that strategy and seeing if it actually works is what I gotta continue to do. So yeah, I'm pretty disciplined and I don't want to flip, I don't want to wholesale. I just want to buy and own and hodl.
Yeah. So if you're not on any wholesaler email list, Ivan, that's like the first thing I would give you as homework is like go sign up for a bunch of wholesaler email lists. If you don't know where to find them, step one is literally just type in like Ontario wholesalers. Step two would be go look at a bunch of local Facebook groups for different regions or province oriented investor groups. Join those. And again, just if you ask like, hey, are there any wholesalers here? You'll get spammed with a bunch of people being like, hey, join my email list, Just sign up for all of them and then just kind of sift through those. And what's great about those deals is usually there's actually going to be more information presented to you about those deals than you get from realtor.ca. So you'll actually get a better understanding of what the average expenses are and what the average income is for properties. And that's just going to help you become a, just more of a local expert.
That's super helpful advice. Yeah, because I haven't gone into that. I've just been filtering and checking realtor.ca like every other day. So
yeah. And these days, for myself, we probably buy less than 10% of our deals off of MLS. So the vast majority of our transactions are going to occur privately.
Right. Okay, cool. That makes sense, man. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ivan.